Feldway returned to the Heavenly Star Palace as if fleeing. His body ached from the beating given to him by Diablo, but he would be safe here. Although there were no signs of recovery yet, time would surely heal him. In short, he just needed to buy time. Only a limited number of individuals could jump directly to the Heavenly Star Palace. Down in the lower world, Ivorage was present, and breaking through the Tower of Heaven's passage was nearly impossible. Feldway intended to rest his body here and aim for a comeback. Diablo's strength had been unexpected, but next time he would win. I will win. Feldway was convinced of it. He had learned Diablo's tactics, and after observing Yuki's battle, he had incorporated instant teleportation into his own combat style. No matter how strong Diablo was, he was no longer a match for Feldway. However, there were uncertain elements. Demon Lord Remure. That terrifying slime had managed to return even from the endpoint of time and space. It was a hard fact to believe. It meant that chronosiltation no longer worked on Remure. Tisk, if only he had just perished at the end of time and space. Muttering this, Feldway walked along the ravaged path, aiming for the throne. However, an unexpected guest was already there. Yo, looks like you got beaten pretty badly. Sitting sloppily on the throne was Dino, who was supposed to be conquering Ramrus's labyrinth. Pico and Gracia were there as well. On chairs separate from the throne Dino occupied, the two of them sat relaxing as they pleased. For all three to have returned together, did they flee from the labyrinth conquest? Or perhaps... It seems Vega lost. So, did you run away and come back? When Feldway asked this, Dino shrugged his shoulders. Look, there was no point in running or not. It was impossible. Even that insect demon King Zelanis got taken down by Zijin, you know. What? That was a shocking report. He had heard of Vega's defeat, but he thought Zelanis was still alive and well. It seemed his assessment had been too optimistic, Feldway realized, grinding his teeth. Diablo. Wrong. I just told you, Zijin took him down. Feldway thought that if it wasn't Diablo, it would be impossible, but it was emphasized that it was indeed Zijin who defeated Zelanis. There were many powerful individuals under Remure's command that required vigilance, but they were apparently an even greater threat than Feldway had anticipated. Which means, you got beaten by Diablo. Hahaha, that's funny. With this, maybe even you can understand how dangerous those guys are. Yeah. That guy is seriously dangerous. Zijin was trauma level 2. Honestly, I don't even know which one is stronger. Diablo, and Zijin. And Remure, who commands them all. There were enemies that had to be defeated in order to achieve Feldway's ambition. There were still many obstacles to purging Gnome. Where did I go wrong? Depending on how far Ivorage rampages, next time I will have to rethink my strategy. As Feldway was lost in thought, Dino spoke to him. More importantly. At that moment, the atmosphere around Dino changed. From his usual aloof attitude, his presence sharpened like a honed blade. At this point, Feldway suddenly began to notice a sense of unease, which led him to question Dino's intent. The sacred relic I was keeping carefully preserved here is gone. Do you know anything about it? That was what Dino asked. What? That's impossible, Feldway thought. Feldway turned his back to the throne and began to walk. Ahead lay the door leading underground to the Holy Ark. It prided itself on an intensity comparable to the Tower of Heaven's passage, and played the role of blocking intruders. However, it had been smashed to smithereens, and the stairs were fully visible. In the Holy Ark, the sacred relic was enshrined. For it to be left in such a defenseless state was something that should not have happened. After all, the sacred relic was the body of Lucia, the beloved wife of the Star King Dragon Veldanava. Dino had found it and stored it in the Holy Ark for safekeeping. It was a top secret known only to a very few. Incidentally, the Holy Ark refers to a coffin made of Holy Spirit energy. It was a relic equal to the chrono coffin that Luminous had used to seal herself, and it should have been unbreakable by anyone belonging to the darkness. This place was safer than anywhere else in the world. That was an undoubtable fact. That was precisely why Feldway kept his main body preserved in this land. After all, Feldway had assisted in the creation of this place. He had confirmed its safety with double and triple checks. And yet, the door to the Holy Ark had been destroyed. Was it Ivorage? Without turning around, Feldway asked Dino and the others following behind him. I can't think of anyone else, Dino stated flatly. This is your blunder, Feldway. If you hadn't left the Heavenly Star Palace unguarded, their precious bodies wouldn't have been stolen. As Dino pointed out, the Heavenly Star Palace had been thoroughly ravaged. Even equipment that was difficult to destroy had been wrecked. Naturally, Feldway had noticed this, but he had dismissed it as a trivial matter. Things like the restoration of the Heavenly Star Palace could be thought about after the fundamental world was destroyed. However, the loss of the sacred relic was a problem that could not be ignored. If the vessel meant to host Veldanava upon his resurrection was lost, he would not be forgiven. Since he was a dragon kind who existed as nothingness, he could resurrect even from nothing. However, the sacred relic of Lucia, Veldanava's beloved wife, could never be reproduced again. If Lord Veldanava were to resurrect, I would have no face to show him. This was Feldway thinking purely based on his own logic. The deep-seated resentment of feeling abandoned by Veldanava had driven Feldway to the extreme conclusion of destroying everything, but in the depths of his heart, he still sought his master. Though he didn't want to admit it to himself, that was Feldway's misfortune. Reflected in Feldway's eyes was the tragic side of the smashed Holy Arkansas. Damn it. Dino's story was true. This was no longer a place to pray for peace of mind. Damn you, Ivorage, doing as you please. No, that's wrong. Dino hesitated on whether to interject. However, thinking it would be troublesome even if countered, he kept his mouth shut. More than that, he prioritized confirming what needed to be confirmed. One thing, until your main body returned, was this place safe? What? No, well, this was a place only you or Lord Veldanava could enter, and since we couldn't just come and go as we pleased, I was wondering if we can really conclude this was Ivarage's doing. What are you trying to say? There was an implication in Dino's words, which were unusually serious. Feldway became concerned and thought about it seriously. Aside from himself or Veldanava, no one could open the door leading to the Holy Ark. That was why he hadn't anticipated this place being ransacked. You didn't just forget to lock it, did you? Breaking the door is difficult, but if it wasn't locked, that's a different story. The divine protection wouldn't activate, so the strength would drop to a level where even Dino and the others could break it. Don't be ridiculous. Right. I think that's unlikely too. Well, maybe Dino would make a mistake like that, but surely not Feldway. Gracia pointed it out sharply, but quickly conceded. Even looking at it from Pico and Gracia's perspective, they couldn't imagine Feldway making such a foolish mistake. Hey. Dino alone seemed dissatisfied. However, pulling himself together and adopting a serious expression, Dino released his next words. Then, what about the possibility that Lord Veldanava has resurrected? The reason Dino pointed out that possibility was the state of the door. Breaking the door from the outside was thought to be impossible, but it was structurally weak against impacts from the inside. The reason was that the defenses only faced outward. Looking at the traces of the broken door, Dino thought it looked like it had been blown open from the inside. Of course, it was also possible that Ivorage had simply broken the lock, invaded, and then rampaged on his way out. No, the possibility that he absorbed the sacred relic inside was higher. But, even so, Dino could not deny the possibility of Veldanava's resurrection. This was by no means a happy conversation. Given the timing of the resurrection, doubts remained. From Dino's perspective, it was a deduction he wanted to be wrong. If Veldanava had truly resurrected, why now? Did he awaken to the crisis because the world was about to perish, just as Feldway desired? If that were the case, it'd be fine, but I have a feeling it's not. Dino didn't understand anything. That was why it was terrifying. He might be overthinking it, but Dino's bad premonitions had a precision of 99 times out of a good premonition hitting the mark. That is why he voiced his deduction, wanting Feldway to deny it. What are you saying? No, it's just a possibility, but if the two bodies were kept safe when you returned to your main body, then they disappeared after that. That timing would be before the army of Ivorage invaded the Heavenly Star Palace. In that interval, if he resurrected and returned to the fundamental world. Feldway pondered the possibility Dino had voiced. From the time Feldway returned to his main body until the invasion of the cryptids began during that time, there wasn't much margin. The theory that Veldanava had resurrected was simply too absurd. If it were true, surely he would have made it public. Feldway, who had manipulated Melon and others, would be targets of Veldanava's purge. That is how it should be. Even if his power wasn't perfect yet. No, is there a reason he couldn't show himself? Only for Lord Veldanava, surely that isn't the case. It's not possible, Feldway concluded. That's impossible. Right. For Dino, this was desirable, and for Feldway, it was a disappointing but accepted conclusion. However, a troublesome problem still remained. This wasn't a possibility, but almost certainly reality. Pico and Gracia pointed it out. Which means... Yeah, exactly. It's almost certain that Ivorage ate Lord Veldanava's sacred relic. Dino nodded at this. Right. That world-destroying dragon Ivorage, who was troublesome enough as is, might have absorbed Lord Veldanava's power. Not just Veldanava, but Lucia's power as well. This threat was beyond comprehension, and Dino felt an ominous sensation he couldn't shake. It was dangerous to deal with, and he rationally thought it wasn't his job to do so. That's why he could casually toss the problem to Feldway. For Feldway, however, this was a possibility he could not ignore. For the purpose of destroying the world, having Ivorage rampage was beneficial. However, creating an evil god that was beyond control would become a major problem for Feldway. His goal was the reconstruction of the world. What do you intend to do? Since it was someone else's problem, Dino asked about his policy casually. This irritated Feldway, but at this point, he finally realized a fact. His dominance over Dino was gone. Have you escaped my influence? Ha, just now. Don't play dumb. Just so you know, it's not just me, but Pico and Gracia too. You put us through a lot of trouble until now, but we don't need to listen to your orders anymore. That's how it is. We are free. Feldway felt bitter. He understood that since they had escaped the authority of his dominance, they had no intention of answering, even if he asked the reason. Originally, they were selfish guys, so he had forcibly placed them under his command. If that influence no longer reached them, controlling Dino and the others would be difficult. Are you betraying me? Feldway had no right to complain. Dino and the others were the ones who should be angry. Hey, wait a minute. We're the ones who should be cutting ties with you. That's right. You should have respected our free will, but you worked us hard without permission. Exactly. We aren't exactly betraying you, but we aren't walking the same path, you know. Each of them said whatever they pleased and declared their severance. The reason Dino came here was to confirm whether the rumor that the world-destroying dragon Ivorage had appeared in the Tower of Heaven's Passage, and that the Heavenly Star Palace was safe was true or not. Just as he feared, the sacred relic had been stolen. It would have been better if they could have prevented it, but now that they were on the back foot, there was no use regretting it. Now, it was a problem beyond their ability to handle, so they decided to move on. So, meeting Feldway here was merely a coincidence, and since they could complain to him while they were at it, they felt surprisingly refreshed. Therefore, acting as if they had no more business with Feldway, the three of them began chatting amongst themselves. Ramur-san seems to have returned, so Rammus will probably hire us again, right? That's impossible. You just slack off all the time. No. Even Vester said he needs me. It's a promise that he'll put in a good word for me if I'm ever in trouble. He's a good person. Isn't he just being soft on you? Don't worry. I'll introduce you guys too. Be grateful, Dino said, looking self-important. Pico and Gracia followed Dino while complaining. There was, certainly, an invisible bond between them. So that's that. Do whatever you like, Feldway. Dino said, as if he had just remembered. Hearing that, Feldway thought, don't screw with me. Don't say such selfish things. Do you have no sense of righteousness? And to respect a slime born only recently, have you forgotten your pride as a primordial? Enraged, he shouted without thinking. However, Dino replied aloofly. No, it's meaningless no matter how many years you live in vain. What's important is how you live, right? The strength of your will is what makes your soul shine. Dino unfolded his theory and looked at Feldway with pity. Then, his expression turning serious again, he offered a warning. Your eyes are clouded right now. Remember your original intention one more time. That was kindness, in Dino's own way. Having said what he needed to say, Dino turned his back. Pico and Gracia followed him. Stop doing things with unclear meanings, like trying to destroy the world. Bye-bye, Feldway. We didn't hate you, you know. Leaving those selfish remarks, the three of them left. Left behind, Feldway stood there in a daze. Too late. I cannot stop the plan now. He muttered to no one. Current Feldway was empty. He lost his friend. He lost his comrades. And his master was not there. The plan had failed, and all that remained was the world-destroying dragon Ivorage. But was that really okay? A doubt remained. Apparently, if Ivorage had even eaten Feldway's memories. The cause lay within himself, so he had no right to complain. However, leaving it be felt wrong. As Dino said, he didn't think Veldanava had resurrected. So, the conclusion was that Ivorage had eaten it. Wait, what was Dino worried about? If Lord Veldanava had resurrected, my goal would have been achieved. It would be a joyous thing, not a problem. More than that. The problem was Ivorage. Dino seemed to fear the possibility of Veldanava's resurrection, but the possibility that Ivorage had absorbed the sacred relic was the bigger problem. If it meant Ivorage had gained the Creator's authority, there was a fear that he had become an uncontrollable existence. If so, reconstruction of the world would be out of the question, but Feldway laughed, whatever. If Veldanava would not resurrect, then everything was meaningless. The reason he was trying to destroy the world was that he thought Veldanava would resurrect to stop Feldway. Even if Feldway utilized Milim, Veldanava would surely not allow it. Even if the world were destroyed, if it was Veldanava, he could regenerate it from nothing. So there was no need to worry. He just had to start over from the beginning. Therefore the absolute worst ending for Feldway was that Veldanava would not resurrect. That was the most empty, despairing future, and somewhere in his heart, he had accepted it. Although defeated by Diablo, Feldway possessed unparalleled strength. Such was Feldway, but suddenly he felt a chill. Dino's intuition was sharp. If Dino was viewing the situation with that much anxiety. What if even this situation is exactly as Lord Veldanava intended? It was foolish humanity that killed Veldanava. Therefore, even if they were unable to prevent it and were abandoned by him, Feldway believed it should be accepted. Therefore, even if humanity were purged, there should be no complaints. If it served Veldanava's resurrection, it should rather be welcomed. Just as Michael had thought, Feldway felt the same. But if stopping the destruction of the world was Veldanava's will, then all of his actions would be meaningless. It was a realization Feldway arrived at now, having never considered his master's true heart before. Lord Veldanava, what is your true intention? That mutter became a sound louder than he expected, echoing through the heavenly star palace. There was no one in this place who could answer that question.